The Eastern Kicks podcast is brought to you in association with Guelo Beer. Use discount code EK10 at guelobeer.co.uk or guelobeer.com and get 10% off your order every time. Hello and welcome to the Eastern Kicks podcast, a regular magazine program about East Asian film led by me, Andrew Heskins, founder and grandmaster of easternKicks.com, and James Mudge, our leading writer.
Hey-o.
Each episode we'll be taking a look at the latest films, news and festivals, often chatting to filmmakers and stars along the way. Welcome to the last podcast of the year, and time for a look back on the highs and lows of Asian film in 2021. We're delighted to be joined for this special episode by Panos, Grandmaster at Asian Movie Pulse.
That's about right.
Meanwhile, Eastern Kicks regulars Niina and Theo will share their thoughts on favourite films from this year. But firstly, we always have to get on to that really important question of the episode. James, what are you drinking this time?
It's Christmas, so I'm drinking gin. Straight gin. Which I think is very kind of Charles Dickens style, right? Which is kind of... There you go, that's my kind of weak justification for drinking gin at Christmas. Like I wouldn't drink it in summer, spring, winter, autumn, anytime. But I have a very nice blood orange gin. It's not a craft gin either, which is good. So, yeah, I'm quite well set. I've got 2/3 of a bottle. I'll be all right, man. And how about you? What are you drinking?
So, on my recent trip to Somerset, I've come back from the Quantock Hills with a bottle of Quantock Stag from the Quantock Brewery, which is a strong ale in true IPA style, 6%.
Very nice. How about you, Panos? What are you drinking?
I'm terribly sorry. I'm just having a cup of coffee here, but I will join you with alcohol in the moment as soon as I wake up. Properly, I mean. Okay.
Fair enough.
You're hours ahead, Panos. So are you only getting up at about 5 p.m. in the evening? Then?
I take the Spanish call it siesta, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's about it. Yeah. So a bit of coffee to get me going, and alcohol a bit later.
Fair enough.
All right. So let's get on to the chat. To make things a little bit more interesting, I've summed up the topics in a completely random fashion, using titles of soul and funk songs. Why? Well, why not? I put them all into a Santa hat, which I'll randomly pull out for us to discuss. And to make things more interesting for our listeners, if anyone can name all the artists for the song titles used, let us know via email, comments or social networks, and we'll do a tombola of prizes from my giant DVD pile.
Okay.
Korean DVDs.
No, James, we've sold most of your Korean DVDs.
Yay! Well, if somebody
Not
needs
many
some
left,
of
it's just the ones that nobody wants.
Well, people are welcome to them, I suppose.
So let's get on to the first topic. I'm going to dip my hands into the packet and let's see what we've got here. So we have Smoke.Netflix.Chill. I wonder what that could be about.
Well, I mean, 2021 is certainly, unsurprisingly, been a very big year for streaming services, and definitely for Asian content appearing as well. I mean, both the film selection is, I think, across Netflix, Amazon, Shudder, everything is really random and pretty nonsensical. But it's been a huge time for Korean stuff and Korean series in particular.
And we've had lots, haven't we? I mean, we kind of predicted that this was going to happen with the whole pandemic and lack of content, didn't we? We were talking about this, and it does seem to have. And this is one occasion where it's kind of followed through, and where we've seen things. Who would have thought that a streaming TV series from Korea about a Squid Game would be, one of the most watched things in the world.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I guess, it was to be expected since Asians and particularly Korean and Japan and India and whatnot, they were the only ones who were shooting in 2020, right? The rest of the world was in quarantine or lockdown or whatnot, but they continued shooting, so it was to be expected this year. We were going to watch a lot of Asian content, I guess. And also, okay, so it seems you said random, but okay, I read an article like a couple of weeks before about how Netflix picks its stuff, and as far as I see, they are really invested in star quality. I mean, they watch, like, if the protagonist of a series has like a lot of followers or something like that, they are going to pick that one. So it's not exactly random. They take, they think about factors like that, I guess. But okay, in terms of content and what gets out there, I guess it is random. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not so much random. I think it's just interesting. I mean, definitely the production and COVID is a huge factor to it. But I think we've been seeing, certainly for Korean stuff, we've been seeing such a growth in Korean culture in general. Just whether it's like drama series, films, kind of. I don't think films quite so much. I mean, after Parasite, we didn't get too many more hit films. It had a big impact, Parasite, but I think it was just part of this wider thing, and all the K-pop and the sissy men, as Xi Jinping calls them. Sorry, I can't resist.
We had an Oscar for Yoon Yo-jung in Minari as well. You know, it's still very. You know, it's kind of interesting. It's like the Korean Wave 2.0, isn't it? That it's suddenly we've spoken about this. James and I have spoken about this on previous podcasts, but it really has come out of the omnipresence of Korean pop, K-pop, just being, it's not 10 years ago it was still kind of ghettoized and
ghettoized,
for one of a better expression. It's I'm sure there are much better ones, but it was still a niche interest, and now it's nobody even thinks about it really being Korean. It's just there are pop songs that are getting to number one in our charts, and it's not even that's not really much a consideration in that sense. But it has brought this massive interest in Korean culture that is just.
Yeah, I mean, if you tell me like a year ago that I'd be actually looking forward to, we've got The Silent Sea starting on Christmas Eve. If you told me a year ago I'd be looking forward to a K-drama show, I'd have, I probably wouldn't have done much, but I wouldn't have believed you anyway. Because we're not, all this before, you think about K-drama, you just think about whether it's the kind of sissy men or just the crying and the sort of shy, awkward romance stuff and everything, until a couple of years ago. For a lot of people, I think, even people like, I don't know, like myself at least, who, very invested in Korean film, I still had K-drama. Even just the name K-drama makes it sound like K-pop, which is not something I would go near. But now it's becoming so mainstream and stuff. And it's going to be really interesting to see if this is a trend or a wave, and if it goes away again, or if this stuff is just now part of the mainstream moving forwards.
Yeah, well, I think that the Korean dramas really got better than what they used to be. Like, they used to address as far as I see, teenage girls for the most part. That was the main audience. But now it's a bit better. I mean, Squid Game is really enjoyable. Well, no matter how you look at it, it's very entertaining to watch.
We've had loads of them as well. I mean, I thought Hellbound was much better than Squid Game.
I thought so too. Yeah, definitely.
But the only problem with that is we do need that second season to put it all together. Otherwise, we do. It's invested.
Soon. We need it soon as well, man. It's annoying. And the same as I thought Sweet Home was very good. And that, without saying too much about it, that ends, with a proper like cliffhanger type thing as well, as to what's coming next. And if that doesn't come soon, I'll be annoyed at that as well. And I haven't watched Her Name yet, but I'm going to watch that. And have you guys heard of a series? It's not on Netflix, called The Cursed, a Korean one.
Yes.
Yeah, is that
by the same director as Hellbound? He wrote it. Didn't he?
So Young Sang-ho wrote it and everything. But there was a film version of it recently, or a film continuation of it, which came out recently, called like Dead Man's Prey. No, just because it's not turned up anywhere in the West. I was surprised that you thought that would have been a no-brainer for Netflix to pick up, given its connections to stuff like Hellbound and everything. But it sounds very much like a Young Sang-ho type thing, where it sounds a bit of a slightly wackier take on stuff with people with powers and everything and the undead and whatnot. So it sounds pretty cool. Maybe they'll start going back, and because at the moment Netflix, they have all these, what they call them Netflix originals. Doesn't mean they actually had fuck all to do with them. But whether it is the Hellbounds, the Squid Games, maybe they'll start going back up and picking up some of these other ones.
Because they've done that with the Squid Game director. They picked up his old films and put those on.
That's right. Yeah. And they were working with him already because Psychokinesis was a Netflix production. So I'm never quite sure, because it's Netflix and they're mysterious. Nobody can't even find their office. But yeah, it's never quite sure how they work or whether they have these deals set up where they're just gonna bring all this content through gradually. But no, I was just mentioning The Cursed because I hadn't heard of it before and I quite fancy seeing it. But I'm not going to go out of my way. So I'm lazy.
Okay. Yeah, but why do you think all people watched Squid Game? I don't know, people who never watched Asian movies before have watched Squid Game now. I don't know what's happening.
Just critical mass, I think. You guys, that's how Netflix works and these things work.
It was very quick as well. I mean, there was a lot of talk about it, and they, I don't know if they kind of employed influencers or how these kind of things work, but we when you very quickly see people at The Guardian, within a few days of it debuting and talking about it, and then since then we've had an article from The Guardian pretty much every couple. It was a point where it was at least one a day, and now it's tailed back to about once a week. But
but it was just, I think it is just that different. That's the difference with you reached that sort of word of mouth critical mass much quicker now.
Yeah.
Because of the way Netflix pushes stuff relentlessly. No, I don't mean relentlessly in a bad way or anything. Even it's just they're mysterious algorithms, and they do a pretty good job of getting stuff out to mainstream media as well, which get covered. So it's just,
and also that it's there for everyone as well.
It's there for exactly.
The minute it gets into the top 10, then it's presented to every Netflix user as what's trending and.
Exactly, and it's because all the episodes are there. It's not even that long a series. It's it's not like there's a massive amount of investment for people to go out and look for and try it. And I don't like it too much myself, but it's an easy concept just to describe to people. And I think one thing we said before, Andy, it'd be interesting to see what the stats were as to how many people, say even just in the UK, who watched the dub version versus who watched the Korean language version. Because we've had all the chat about subs, but
because there was, and I think we might have spoken about it before as well. But there was a story saying, "Oh no, more people are still watching Strictly."
Much more. It's a huge amount number, yeah.
But the stat they were using only seemed to include the English dub of Squid Game.
It was a really confusing
people who are watching the actual original language subtitles on, which, according to the story, even kids nowadays watch stuff with subtitles, even if they're watching the dubbed version of it. Some sort of thing that youngsters do. I
have subtitles constantly, but that's just because I'm old
apart from
and my
anything
hearing's...
else, you have to kind of go. Sometimes you have to kind of reset the old Netflix. And go, no, actually, this one I don't need subtitles.
That's true, but yeah, we'll see how this continues, because Hellbound didn't have as much of a it initially sounds like it's got a high concept premise, but it's not like it's not that kind of very manufactured narrative the way Squid Game is, and it was still hugely popular. So hopefully that will, hopefully that it'll continue. And that's kind of the other reason, I guess. Whereas I get slightly slower to get into some of these things is because I can't be bothered if it's going to be a flash in the pan thing. With Netflix equally, that stuff will still be there in a year if I really wanted to watch it. It's not going to disappear. So it's really got this kind of it's so hot right now type and everything. But will it still have that? I don't know. Maybe on Christmas Eve, the old Silent Sea. After I watch Krampus, of course, because it's Christmas Eve. Maybe the Silent Sea will turn out to be a heap of pish, or it'll just be a.
It's got Bae-Doon, right? Very much down.
It doesn't have Sam Neill.
It doesn't have Sam Neill.
It's a Space Ghost film.
Got him in for a cameo or something.
Exactly. I don't know. I know. Joking aside, it looks good. I'm looking forward to it. So we'll see. But I don't know.
Even the stuff. Bae-Doon is, bless her. She's rarely in anything that's rubbish, and
that's
even
true.
if it's rubbish, she's always good in it.
She was with Hugo Weaving and stuff. So maybe Hugo Weaving could turn up. I don't know.
Yeah, you never.
He's not.
Antipodean and standard.
Exactly, man.
The average annual rainfall hit another low. The world's water will be reduced by 40% in the next 10 years.
제가 찾아온 이유는 아주 중대한 임무에 참여할 우주 생물학자가 필요해서입니다. 발해 기지입니다. 달에 착륙한 후 여러분들의 임무는 기지 안에 남아있는 중요 샘플을 회수하여 지구로 귀환하는 것입니다.
But we'll see where it goes. But I think one thing we have seen then through all this is that, before when we were back a few years, even like Japan was kind of like the cool Asian country, and I think Korea is the cool Asian country now. One way or the other.
I mean, it's true. I mean, I think there's still, and for a long time, it was on all sorts of different kind of types of film for Japan. But it's interesting now. Back in the day, for Japan, it was, as far as perhaps less so with Europe, but definitely in the US and the UK. It was definitely Japan's cool, but not really for the anime and the manga.
Yeah.
Until the last kind of 20 or so years. But actually, those things are still very cool. But now, as far as everything else is concerned, it's all Korea.
It is, yeah, and even just restaurants, everything like that. And I wonder if people will start drinking soju more, because I think sake has got reasonably mainstream at least, but soju is maybe. It's a bit of a slightly weirder drink than sake, I think.
Well, that's the business we need to get into. When we chat to our sponsors next time, maybe we need to look at a soju mashup.
I quite like soju, but it does give you bad hangers if you drink a lot of it. Whereas sake is pretty harmless, even if you drink a huge amount. So I don't know. Maybe it's Korean friends have said it's all the chemicals in soju, and they've just told me I'm better off not knowing. But I drink, which I think is unfair, given that I like buckfast. So
you know all about chemicals.
It's herbs, mysterious herbs made by the monks.
Herbs, yes.
Herbs.
Well, the truth is, though, that, as far as I see, it starts from the movies and goes to the whole culture thing, but the Japanese didn't seem so eager, like never, to promote their culture, at least not as much as Korean does, which does it systematically, even through their government. Let's say they are promoting their culture. Japan was just
That's true.
exploiting its uniqueness, but not exactly promoting it.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
It's a very different attitude, and it has been. Korea has massively, easily for the last 10, 15 years, been massively outwardly promoting itself to everyone. Whereas Japan's always been a lot more in looking, and I guess that's kind of caught up with it now. I mean, the audiences and.
Yeah. I mean, there's still quite a lot of Japanese stuff on Netflix, isn't there? Like, what's Alice in Borderland, which I still haven't.
But again,
watched,
that kind of comes back to the sort of anime manga interest, which that's definitely still very present, but that's the bit that has hung on, I think. So shall I move on to the next one? So I'm just putting my hand into Santa's hat. Well, what have we got here? Okay, this might be a little look. Right, get on the party line. What could that be?
I'm not a really funky person, so you're gonna have to you're gonna have to give us a bit more of a clue, or me at least anyway.
Well, the party line towing.
Oh, the party as a certain CC party.
Well, could be. I mean, it's
right.
Again, I mean, like this has been going on for a while, but we've seen. I guess with the absence of anything else really, that mainland cinema has become even more nationalistic and propagandist and chippy on its shouldery about everything else.
That's not a bad way of putting it. Yeah.
That's what we've seen in the UK. I mean, I don't know. Does anything even make it to Greece, Panos? I mean, I'm sure it's.
Yeah, we don't get any. well, okay, it's all over the place. Okay, we now, all right, we have And I mean, now, okay, I understand, okay, there is more censorship, more control, whatnot, but still, I think in a couple of years there will be almost, I think they have already surpassed US movie industry in terms of the number of titles they produce in China, even in all those rules and whatever they have, so I'm not sure.
And also, it's just more difficult for, I mean, there's for years and years we've had this thing of easily 20, 25 years of the Americans trying to break into the Chinese market, and this year that's really been cut off completely, hasn't it? The last couple of years, it's not just, I mean, China's been one of the places where cinemas have been open for more often, but
I think the whole co-production thing is gone. I don't really see it happening under the current. We're both for the political reasons, but even just like having been involved with some co-productions which tried to happen and didn't. Just the culture of how you approach these things is just completely different. Even just when you get down to the nitty gritty of like financing everything, like in terms of agreeing contracts, because Chinese law doesn't apply anywhere apart from China, but you won't get a Chinese company to sign a contract in anything apart from Chinese law. So, even just that very, very basic, which we've kind of seen in some screening agreements as well, film festival stuff and everything, before we had Hong Kong law, which, so it was kind of halfway between the UK and Chinese law, whereas now that's probably not really a thing. So, yeah, we are... I think it's not just because of the sort of differences with culture. We're seeing this whole surge in not just propagandist films, but films which are embracing the idea of like a new Chinese military and everything. Like the Chinese military sort of standing up and everything, initially to defend itself, but at the same time with quite sinister undertones. Actually, no, they're overtones. To be honest, they're not really undertones. It's not subtle. So. And that's why we're seeing so many of these films like, the 800 or the Battle of Lake Changjin and everything, which are just, sort of Call of Duty style war porn, but even less subtle than like Rambo was and things in the 80s, or less subtle than Michael Bay, and less funny than Armageddon, because Armageddon's still a great film, but not for the right reasons.
It's ridiculousness, so I don't think anybody, that's going to...
That's it exactly. And when you see these other films, or something like 1921, which has a young Chairman Mao drag racing in it, honestly, fuck. But there's no sense of anything
that have
to
got
them.
away with it. I think we talked about this in a previous podcast, but Cliff Walker's.
That's a good film. Yeah.
Was actually got away with it by almost literally rubber stamping the beginning and the end.
Yes.
With the big message, and actually just having a really lovely, very beautifully done espionage, very old school, very Hitchcock, very Third Man kind of thriller all the way through. But so many of the other films, I mean, I have to admit, I'm not a massive fan of war films anyway.
Fair enough.
And it doesn't matter where they're coming from. To be fair, I've seen there was a point where there was quite a few. Some of the Korean ones actually kind of.
There was a phase of that, wasn't there?
Yeah, there's a big phase of sort of Into the Fire or whatever.
My Way, everything. Yeah.
But even those weren't amazing. But I have no interest in watching these films.
But I just watch them out of masochism, and so I can get. Well, otherwise, I end up just writing for Eastern.Kicks, like films. Like, here's another Category 3 splatter film, 5 stars. Here's like a Japanese horror film. Oh, that's pretty good. I have to find a balance with things I'm unlikely to enjoy. Put it that way. But we'll take it. But we'll still go with a reasonably open mind. But there's just the military build-up in these films is what I find sinister, and especially in that Battle of Lake Changjin, which is, even though it's got nothing to do with Taiwan, there's still lots of chat about Taiwan and everything in the film, and it just doesn't. So many of these things don't fit, and like you say, there's no. Armageddon's a ridiculous film, even when you're getting the slow motion shots of the old glory, the stars and stripes flying, and most people in cinema are just laughing and everything, but it's still entertaining. There's nothing entertaining about the 800, 1921, the Battle of Lake Changjin, Chinese Doctors, any of these films, and it's not even just that fact. It's some of the other laws or regulations which have passed in China in the year, like every cinema, like by law, has to screen propaganda films at least like 2 or 3 times a week. Art house films have to do it more. Art house cinemas have to do it even more, apparently. all these stuff like mobilizing party members and youth party members to promote stuff as being part of their, communist education. And these cinemas are told these things have to be well attended to certain levels, which is probably why, we've always heard these things before about cinema ticket levels. How real are they coming from these places? And if you're running a cinema and you're told by the local party head that you have to get X number of people to watch this film about Chairman Mao, you're going to hit that X target. I don't think anyone's going to say, yeah, there was one old guy in there. I know, it's this whole thing about cinema programming now having to reflect Xi Jinping thought. And like cutting of kissing scenes, and the love for the party must be expressed as much as your partner. And, I don't know. I think before long we're going to see the disappearance of technical problems, because there's not going to be that many films left which people actually bother to make. Because if you can't release them, you can't make any money from them. This kind of proper independent film is going to go.
That's the question. I mean, what is the future of this situation?
I don't know. It's a shame, because there's so many really talented Chinese filmmakers, both commercially and indie ones, art house ones, documentary, across the board. China's been a fantastic place for cinema, and even until a couple of years ago, there was so much hope still in everything. Chinese films were getting out into the major festivals a lot more, and now I don't know. I mean, we have to remain hopeful for stuff, but I'm not. But I think, like, one thing you said, Andy, at the start of that was, I'm also very, very aware. Of course, we have a limited, slightly more limited perspective, because we don't get many other films making it to the UK. I mean, there's only one company in the UK currently releasing stuff, really, and it really just does propaganda films. So, there might well still be other, Chinese commercial films which are not doing well at the box office, so we're not hearing about them. So there might be a fair whack of good stuff, because Netflix isn't working with China, so we're not getting it on Netflix.
So the other thing is, it's getting, as we know all too well, it's getting more and more difficult to, whether these films are ones that are released, or at least given the Dragon Seal to appear at film festivals. That's going to be more and more difficult for film festivals to pick those, whatever's left of those films up to, and present them to audiences in Europe and and UK and the US. Because we know some of the issues that go with that.
Oh, we do. We have experienced them firsthand, and it's a real shame, because China's got such a fantastic history of cinema and filmmakers. All the different generations, and then some of the younger generations, and so many good young filmmakers were breaking through these last few years. But we'll have to see where it goes, and I think what's worrying a bit is the fact that all this stuff has been accelerating the censorship, this need to screen, forcing cinema, not forcing, but telling cinemas they have to screen propaganda stuff, this build-up of the military in Chinese films, everything. I don't know. It has, like a lot of these things, it's happened quite quickly. So I don't know. I suspect we'll see changes in the next couple of years, one direction or the other. I don't know, man. I don't know. I suppose we should get most worried if we see a film which sort of about the invasion of Taiwan. Directed by Chiang Kai-ge or someone.
Well, these Yin Yang Master films were kind of fun. I don't know if you watched them. They don't seem propagandistic, at least. They are, video game-like stuff, but I don't know. I thought it was fun watching them. And the other one was Writer's Odyssey, which was...
That was quite... Yeah, that was not bad. I quite liked that. I only saw it on a press screener.
Quite a lot that have come across from the I mean, that's going to... presumably there's going to be impacts on that as well. The sort of the online Chinese streaming services. That we were getting a lot of those films, sort of the kind of very random Ip Man...
Giant snake films.
That was just a fever dream of narrative. I'm guessing that with the crackdown on online sort of generally in China, that some of these services are going to have trouble with what they can and can't make as well, perhaps.
I think so. I mean, online is gradually getting more curbs introduced where previously they didn't really care about it. But we see the massive crackdown. I mean, you know, I keep joking about the whole sissy men thing and everything, but that's being pushed into online stuff now. Like, males have to be, you know, sort of not sissy men. They have to be sort of good, masculine, you know, exponents of the values of the party and everything like that. So it is changing across all the different, you know, all the different. And that's why, you know, we've seen this huge drop off in like Chinese documentaries now, because you don't really make documentaries. You either make sort of glossy CCTV specials, or, you know, you don't really bother now. So but this kind of thing doesn't historically tend to be sustainable. You know, just because nobody really massively enjoys watching a lot of this stuff. It doesn't, you know, you can't really sustain a film industry where the filmmakers and everything are completely held, not just by censorship, but by these sort of nationalism, propaganda, patriotism stuff. You can have that cinema existing for a country alongside a proper, either commercial, creative, independent cinema. But if it's all you have is that one cinema, and it's all completely inward looking, then, you know, people are just going to stop making films because they can't really be bothered. You know, you're going to get property developers making a film, or, you know, that kind of thing, or party officials making films, which are just like, you know, training videos. So it's not. I don't think it's massively sustainable, and I don't. You know, it's not. I wouldn't imagine that whoever's making these decisions, or whatever committees are making these decisions, are blind to any of that. So. And there is real talent still in China, and there's still obviously massive film schools like Beijing Film Academy and everything. So I don't know. I hope for the best, but I don't, you know. We'll see.
But there also seems to be the problem that these censorship guidelines are not clear at all. Like, no one knows exactly what is not supposed to put in their films, right? So it gets even more political like that. If you are friends with the right person, I guess you are okay, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's completely impenetrable, and it changes so much. So you read so many cases of, like, a film gets the production plan signed off, the script signed off, the sign-off to start production, the sign-off to finish production. They get a rough cut approved and everything. They go to get the Dragon Seal to get released, and they're like, nah, mate, sorry, the rules have changed in the last year. You're screwed, sorry. Away you go. Or even in something like the 800 itself was held up for ages, if you remember. It was pulled from Shanghai, and it was specifically because of a couple of obscure references in it, whereas the censorship department, you know, you have the censorship, but then you have so many different, like, sub-departments, like the ones who look at farming, the ones who look at certain aspects of history, the ones who look at food and drink and everything. So they all have to sign off on things. So it's such a huge and completely obscure system that, you know, actually making films through it, you have to do the safest thing possible, whether that's resulting in safe self-censorship, if that's a commercial thing. It's an incredibly tricky thing, which is probably another reason why the whole co-production thing isn't working. Because I think Hollywood would bend over quite happily if they were told exactly what to do to make a film which will pass Chinese censorship.
Well, they already have.
They've tried, but even then, films like, you know, have been not released in China, or have run into trouble in China and stuff. So it's there's such a high risk involved in co-production, production, anything in China, which is another thing about it, which is not, you know, massively sustainable, I think. But, you know, I don't know, man. None of that sounds very positive, does it?
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. And there's also seems to be a lack of, like, the middle film, let's say. Now we get only blockbusters and extreme art house bleak films that show how bad everything else is, and no film in the middle or something like that, you know.
But that's something that's been happening for a long time, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's what that's probably where the online thing is coming in to kind of take the place of that, because you have the massive blockbusters which people go to cinemas and just sit on their phone during the whole film. The decreasing number of, like, art house and indie ones, you know, go to film festivals around the world first and then come back to China, a few of them. And then for people who don't massively care about going to the cinema, I think it's the online, you know, the online audience, because there's been, as I think Andy mentioned, there's been such a huge ramp up in production. And, you know, iQIYI this year has announced a slate of actually pretty big films, which I'm not sure if they're going to cinemas as well as online, but, you know, a lot more like proper big budget films with, you know, big name stars and stuff. So I think that's something now when they're edging out are, they're edging out Western influences, and particularly US influences, whether or not that is going to see these middle films come back in, and whether they're just online or cinema. So that'll be quite interesting to see this year, because I think you are going to see a lot more of a push culturally to reject Western influences this year. Or next year, 2022. It's a bit late for this year.
My name is Niina Doherty, and one of my favorite films of the year was Takashi Shimizu's Howling Village. Howling Village, of course, already came out in 2020, but as it only got its Western release in 2021, it seems appropriate to be talking about it in this end of year review. The story revolves around child psychologist Kanae, whose brother goes missing while visiting a nearby abandoned village. She then needs to dig deep in her own family history to solve the mystery of her brother's disappearance. The concept is based on an urban legend of Inunaki Village. It's said to be an abandoned village accessible only through a mysterious tunnel. Like any good urban legend, the stories of why the village was abandoned vary, from cannibals to incestuous madmen. But one thing always stays the same. If you enter this village, you will never leave. All this alone offers plenty of good material for a horror film, but Shimizu has also decided to add elements from Japanese folklore into the mix, and they do tie in very well with the modern urban legend. The film does fall slightly short on the scare department, and if you're looking for something as terrifying as Ju-On, you will unfortunately not get it here. What you will get is a well-built atmosphere and genuine suspense, and for my mind it more than makes up for any lack of scares. Howling Village is part of a trilogy. Second part, Suicide Forest Village, came out earlier this year, and the final installment, Oxhead Village, is about to get its release soon. Both are also based on Japanese urban legends and look equally as intriguing as the first film in the series. They are yet to be available here in the West, but I for one am keeping my fingers crossed that we see a digital or physical release of them sometime in the near future.
So here we go, unwrapping the next little phrase, song title.
The next gift.
Okay, it's Sitting in Limbo. Which is it's a little bit vague. It's a little bit vague, but it is about. Well, it's probably not. It's a slight reference to the title of a film, and also the fact that in many respects it's no longer in limbo, really, and appropriate to move on to this from the last subject. So yeah, Hong Kong cinema.
Oh, okay. Well, one of you guys start this, because I'm just going to start. I'll start ranting again, or not ranting, but I will start discoursing again. one of you guys can jump on that first.
Well, I don't know. It seems that I had a discussion with Freddie Wong like a couple of years ago, maybe last year, and he was really hoping that. He was really thinking that there is a new wave of Hong Kong filmmakers coming up from the fresh wave and whatnot. But I guess with the new censorship law that's going to be already started, I'm not sure. It already started. I think, it was on the brink of being dead, but now it's dead completely. So I don't think there is any reason to hide behind our fingers. It's what can you do? I mean, if they want, they will not allow them to shoot anything, and they probably will. I don't know.
I mean, we've seen some things pulled for the flimsiest of reasons already, haven't we? The kind of, again, in a very similar fashion, that the slightest of reference to whatever might mean that it needs to be pulled. And I think talking about the Fresh Wave, I think it was a short film earlier this year was one of the first to get caught up in the
I think the director was
national
arrested
security
as well, right? So I didn't follow the rest of the case, but it was, it fell very much foul of these new.
And we know,
national
we
security
know
law.
from our friends at Fresh Wave that a lot of those references are not. They're just the slightest part of the plot, just to rest something on. They're not in any way, shape or form militant or.
No, not at all. They're just
kind of agendas against them.
No, it's just a realistic background to have the protest there and everything. And I don't know, but I think it's the same. One of the same problems we've just talked about, like with the extreme mainland censorship. It's the vagueness of the national security law. And we've seen a few Hong Kong filmmakers, demanding clarity on it and stuff, and not actually getting it, because technically anything which threatens or insults, national security could be pretty much anything. So it's this mad vagueness. I mean, obviously, it's going to come in line with the Chinese censors, which means no horror, no Category 3, unfortunately. Not very much, to be honest. I mean, not compared to like the stuff we've grown up with and love Hong Kong cinema for. So, but I think it's this uncertainty and lack of clarity in the meantime, where how do you produce a film in that environment? We saw a few sneaking out just before, like Jun Li's Drifting and stuff. But it would be interesting, to see I don't know if we ever talked to him about it, just to see if that's where he'd still be able to make that film today. So I don't know, but it can't be. I would love to see us proved wrong, but I can't see anything good coming from this either. And even though we do have a bit of an underground movement of these kind of protest documentaries, like what's Revolution of Our Times and stuff, which have been screening at festivals around the world and winning a lot of praise and stuff. And that's not really going to translate into anything which helps the film industry, though.
No.
They're important to see and make and everything, but they are what they are. They're kind of standalone films, so it's hard not to imagine that. Well, I'm sure that a lot of Hong Kong filmmakers will still manage to work within the system, and we'll see some new Hong Kong filmmakers coming through and stuff. And I hate it's same as China, man. I don't like saying or thinking like that. We are saying, oh no, that's it, we're closed off, Hong Kong cinema is dead, mainland China cinema is dead, when you're going to have new generations coming through. But at the moment, just seeing the way the playing field is, it's Hong Kong's even more troublesome than China in that respect, because this is new. For China, at least, filmmakers have had. If you're making a film in China, you at least know in advance how crazy the censorship system is, and that you might not know everything about it. Whereas in Hong Kong, this is like an entirely new thing for filmmakers, investors, exhibitors, everything. So,
and it makes one of the staple of Hong Kong cinema. And I know, particularly with the Fresh Wave filmmakers, things have moved into a bit of a different area. But staple is all the different genres, and most of which are going to quite likely be no-go areas. All the kind of triads and ghosts.
And Coffin Homes hasn't really appeared anywhere, has it? So I still want to see Coffin Homes very much, but we probably do have quite a few of these films, as your title suggested, Mr. Haskins, which are in limbo now. There probably must be a bunch of films which are.
We've already seen that for a while. There's been all these films that what is. Was it Warriors of the Future, or whatever it's called?
Warriors of... I think it's just Warriors of Future. It's like grammatically slightly weird. I think that's because it's probably shit, to be honest.
We've had Sons of Neon Night, which we've been...
Oh, man,
we've been waiting for an awfully long time. And
been moaning
on about that.
Oh, man, we've been banging for ages. And will that ever appear? I doubt it. I don't know. I'd be surprised, given that it is just a triad film. So, I don't know, man. But I really hope for the best. We just got all the
socially conscious films that we've been getting so many of for a while.
Upbeat sports dramas, specifically underdog sports films. So many, man. So
and I think there must be this is China, not Hong Kong, but how many documentaries about Wuhan were out this year? I mean, I think 8 or something like that. One for every. Yeah.
I'm surprised we haven't seen some other documentaries mysteriously appearing from Hong Kong, which are like pro Hong Kong police or sort of anti protest films or something.
We will get there. We will get there.
We will. At least those would be funny, like following around some evil students, everything like that, who are maybe like smoking a bit of the old wacky tobacco and plotting like with some American, some really bad actors playing some American students saying, "Yeah, we have to crush these Chinese pigs."
I quite like the sound of that.
Actually, that would be quite funny.
That would be fun.
Right, shall we move on to the next?
Let's go. Yeah, let's keep going, man.
Let's go, okay. All right. He opens it up and he presents East-West Shuffle. And yes, it is the name of the song.
I know. I'm sure. Look, I think we've long established my musical ignorance. So.
Oh, don't worry. Some of these are quite obscure, so I'd be surprised if you knew the answer to this one. Anyway, so we this has been ongoing for a while, but at least the last kind of 2 or 3 years, I guess. But we're seeing more of Hollywood and the West doing Asian stories. And often with Asian filmmakers as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is also okay. I think it happened. It started happening a couple of years ago, with the whole thing with the Oscars and the Golden Globes, that their members were only white American males and stuff like that, and they had to apologize from the whole world essentially. And then suddenly started this whole thing changing, and suddenly a lot of Asian films come out. A lot of Asian films get awards. You know how this goes. It's it's like part of a trend, but it wasn't sudden exactly.
No, definitely not. I mean, we had things like The Farewell, Lucky Grandma. It's at least the last few years, and actually some of these films have been, like Minari, are actually very, very good, and then we're getting, we've had the DC try to kind of jump on it a bit with Birds of Prey, but we've had a bit more of it with Shang-Chi and The Eternals,
which are both unreleased in China, so shows how much point there was in Hollywood doing that, but no, I absolutely. It's like you guys say. There's been this. It's not, and in this case as well, it's one of those things like diversity is kind of itself becoming a bit of a dirty word because it sort of suggests tokenism and everything. Whereas I think for also, we had stuff like the huge success of like Black Panther and everything, which showed in a good way that sort of mainstream white Western audiences would very happily go and watch things with other ethnicities in lead roles and stuff, which is very positive. Though there's still this sort of cynicism about it, which is unavoidable, I guess, with commercial cinema and unavoidable with Hollywood. Like if they're seeing a trend which they're clumsily trying to hijack on, and while we're getting some very good genuine stuff like Minari and stuff like that, although I haven't seen it, so I shouldn't say it's great, although I've not met a person who didn't like it, so so there you go. But stuff like the Eternal, Shang-Chi was a piece of piss. Not just because there's no raccoon in it, but it's just it's the only worthwhile thing about Marvel is that he's such a rascal, man. But like Shang-Chi was just pointless. It was the sort of, on the one hand, like it's great that you see like an Asian hero and stuff still cynically pitched towards the Chinese market. There's quite a few touches in it which are very, very Chinese market oriented, rather than Chinese culture oriented, and it was just such a bog standard Marvel origin story. There was absolutely no effort or thought anything went into it, and
all the particularly the sort of Asian Marvel heroes are all quite problematic. They kind of redux them every kind of 10, 20 years to go along with current thinking. Because originally he was Was he the son of Fu Manchu or something?
Something like he definitely had some Fu Man connection.
You know,
in
so
there.
it's you know, they have to keep kind of looking back and actually that doesn't work so well now. Okay, that's completely.
It's also like we are joking, okay, not joking, we're criticizing Chinese censorship, but there is indirect censorship in Hollywood movies, in these blockbusters. Like nowadays, I mean, you see like even companies of superheroes, they need to have like at least one black guy, at least one Asian guy, an old guy, a young guy, you know. Probably a raccoon.
No, that's not.
No, a member of LGBT. You know how it goes. You have to.
No, absolutely.
It looks ridiculous because even some films that are supposedly realistic, they present the world like that, which is not how the whole thing works. You know. And okay, this is Disney. Okay, Disney's main purpose is now to not get anyone offended, because anyone is part of a demographic, and if they offend her, they will lose this demographic. So their effort is to satisfy or at least not offend anyone, and the outcome is completely ridiculous. It's unrealistic, and essentially it's for kids. You know.
And that's what I mean. Like when I said diversity is the actually in theory it's a great thing, having diverse stories, proper, but you need the proper, authentic and genuine stories, and not just this sort of cynicism towards it, where you're just shoehorning stuff in. They're not even because they care. It's like you say, it's just because they don't. It's it's still all about numbers they're trying to rack up. Everything and that's probably why these films like Minari and stuff. There's another one. Blue Bayou or something like that, which or Lucky Grandma, as you mentioned, Andy, which are genuine. They're great films because they are, they're proper stories. They're
and actually reasonably well telling a part of Asian life. I mean, perhaps that's so with Grandma, but real experiences and real diaspora experiences for Asians as well. Being in America and. Or the UK or whatever. Yeah,
and I suppose it's slightly different, I guess, for guys like us, just in a way, in that we've spent too long, watching films from Asia and other parts of the world. So maybe on the plus side, these kind of, halfway house films will maybe get someone who sees Shang-Chi or something will go and watch something proper. Or maybe
there was a little bit of interest in old Tony Young, wasn't there?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Maybe it did seem very short-lived.
It was,
and also because
not like the Guardian and Squid Game stories.
Exactly, or the Guardian and Harry Potter Temptress and everything. Don't get me started on that one again. But you're right. I mean, with Tony Young being in there, then. Hopefully the plus side is some people will go back and check out some of his films, everything.
And Michelle Yeoh seems to be in everything at the moment.
She is.
She?
Yeah,
I'm very happy about that. I mean, she's basically there's a new Witcher.
That's right.
Story.
I didn't even know that was coming.
She's supposed to be in a spin-off of the Star Trek Discovery that she was in. There's a whole load of other projects she seems to be getting too busy to actually do all of these TV shows. But it's great. I mean, I want to see anybody get all this work. I'm quite happy to see Michelle get it.
Oh no, absolutely. You were talking before like Bae Doona being in so much stuff and everything. She's in a lot of Western stuff. So hopefully, So maybe the sort of grumpiness we might feel about some of these stuff like Shang-Chi or Eternals or well, it's not really Asian. It's just got the Chloe Zhao directing it, but maybe it has a much bigger sort of knock-on effect and stuff, which is all part of maybe this whole ties in with things like Squid Game becoming popular, people watching subtitles, and maybe we will see. This is all just small steps towards something better, more open and stuff in the future, properly, and not just cynically. Hollywood being cynical, never.
Hello, this is Mausan. I'm the director of Many Have Fallen. I'm the filmmaker from Myanmar, and I'm now listening to easternKicks.
Shall I move along?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's. Here we go. Moving along. What have we got here? Okay, well this is the name of the song, and the song title is "Theme for Five Fingers of Death." It really is the name of the song.
Well, that's fair. I mean,
Song.
even I don't know the song, but I know obviously I know the Five Fingers of Death, so I feel slightly more not excluded so much with this one.
So this is kind of talking about, and again, I think we've spoken about this on the podcast before, but yeah, they're not really seeing much in the way of new martial arts films. But we're seeing a lot of old ones getting quite premium posh releases, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
And I think essentially the center of martial arts films is now, like Central Asia, Indonesia, and Malaysia. They are the only ones that still produce. Okay, not a lot, but some at least every year. Okay, I don't know. Limbo is a martial art film. Okay, there are some martial arts there,
It's got some brawling in it, I
It
suppose.
has some brawling in there, yeah. But yeah, I think the trend is exactly as you mentioned it, and there is so much back catalog to release. Like just So Brothers is like, I don't know how many martial art films have they produced, like a couple of thousand, who knows. So. But I like the whole thing. I like the trend that the whole thing are getting re-released and in proper, proper editions and stuff. Because we had them on those ridiculously Hong Kong video CDs or whatever from the past, or VHS or
Laserdisc.
Yeah. Mostly dubbed by the same guy who did like 18 parts in the same movie and stuff, even the women. And there seems to be a lot of money to be made there. I don't know. I mean, so many companies taking it up, probably.
You'd assume so. There has to be. I mean, just the sheer amount of stuff which is coming, the amount of different box sets that we've seen coming out this year, which are not cheap to produce on physical media.
I mean, particularly, there's the bonus content which may or may not be paid particularly well. I think
No,
you guys have both been involved in that as well. So that depending on who you're working for may not be massively.
Labor of love.
But take for instance the new Arrow set, the Shore Scope. That's a very it's not just a box with some Blu-ray cases in it. It's been specially made and produced, so that would have cost a fair bit to produce. I expect.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's also because the audience of these movies, the people who buy those box sets and stuff, I think it's our age, so about 25. Okay, I'm joking here. So I think they're in their 40s and above, I guess.
Yeah.
So
and I guess there is a bit of a sweet spot there, isn't there? So it's kind of 40s and above.
Yeah.
People who haven't really adopted digital media,
yeah.
we're still, we still got all the physical. We've still got the laserdisc, definitely.
Yeah.
We're not massively, so that they are really. There is a bit of a sweet spot in the sort of 40 to, should we say, sort of 50, 68 age group who like having the actual physical media.
Yeah,
you can,
and those are the people who are buying it. But I mean, I guess the other side of that is: are there any youngsters coming aboard this trend, or is it does it have the slightly perilous thing where the core audience is getting of an age where?
No, I agree. I think I think it's absolutely great that these things are coming out, but it's not having a sort of knock-on effect into like seeing more martial arts films produced. I don't think it's it's creating any new martial arts or kung fu fans or something.
No, I don't think so.
And we're not seeing. Joking aside about Limbo and stuff, what are we seeing coming from like Hong Kong or China? Anything? I think, like you said, Panos, martial arts films just tend to come from the other sort of Southeast Asia regions now, but they don't. Those tend to be more sort of one-off hits. I mean, you don't see like a massive knock-on, even for something as big as the Raid films. You didn't suddenly see like a massive growth in, Indonesian martial arts films. or anything like that.
Yeah,
So you get these
before
kind of
you have
one-off
the
things.
sort of the
So
on-backs as well, and the sort of
that's right. Yeah,
mid-noughties.
yeah, very, very much so. So, although I think it's great for this, and I agree as well. Like there is like an aging audience, and while you can think, okay, on the plus side, they probably know exactly how many people are going to buy their DVDs, and they probably know them all. They have them on the mailing list already. So on the one hand, you can probably plan a business around that quite nicely. You know, on the downside, it's not growing. That's not a criticism of any of these companies because it's not their job, but it's a shame that there's nothing ever to replace, whether it's the Shaw Brothers, they also have the way Golden Harvest used to be back in the old days. There just isn't. And this is a slightly weirder one because it's not even really like a censorship thing, you know, in that respect, because you know, martial arts is such a part of Chinese culture. But even like in the last, 10, 15 years, there's been so few martial arts films coming out of Hong Kong, even, So I don't know. I don't. I'm not sure why martial arts has dropped off so much.
Violence is frowned upon now, or something like that. I don't know. It's like not good. I don't know.
I don't know, but it was always such a cultural thing, martial arts,
it wasn't
as
really
well.
seen that same kind of. It's one of those things. It's like can't have sissy men kissing girls, but you can beat the shit out of them.
Yeah,
that's fine.
That's the fun. And considering the price of some of these box sets, they are not addressing young people, It's like
Exactly. Absolutely. It's the same.
Very, very true.
It's the same point, isn't it? That it's not for you have to be at a certain wealth and stability. Probably you're probably on your final pay packet pensions to be able to afford these.
But maybe Donnie Yen is like older now, considerably older, so he's not got too much. I personally didn't like Raging Fire. Andy, you liked it more than
I did.
more than
you in a sort of action movie styly, but it wasn't classic Benny Chan for me. It was and I thought old Nicholas C was just a bit lost in it. He's still the best character in there, and so a lot of fun. But he it would have been nice if his character had been developed a bit more rather than, he just had a bit of an off day and then he just went off for one.
Basically. But with him older now, Donnie Yen, Wu Jing was kind of a great hope for a while to be a new martial artist, but he's gone full on, propaganda CCP style films, which in itself would be okay if they were producing martial arts films, but as I've said at great length before, they're just it's just war porn, and like the military and war are good as long as you're on the right side, i.e. our side. So there isn't really anything coming through, and martial arts tends to be that, doesn't it? Whether it's a Jackie Chan, a Jet Li, a Donnie Yen, it kind of needs some star to kind of galvanize stuff. Tony Jaa slipped quite nicely into working in a mixture of like different Hollywood and indie stuff. So
Iko Uwais as well, didn't he? From
exactly.
He started appearing in stuff, but again, kind of massively lost in some of those roles and not.
Oh yeah, they're not great roles, but they're still getting them.
He's actually not a bad actor. I'd say better than Tony, but just lost in those productions, just utterly lost and wasted.
But still getting cast and getting paid the big bucks and stuff. But you can probably tell the kind of level of how good the kung fu martial arts industry is by seeing an interview with the Shang-Chi director saying he really want to have like top martial artist Jackie Chan, in a Shang-Chi sequel and stuff. Well, there you go. That just shows you the sort of in a way the state of the. But I think it ties into like the audience, because if you said that to a lot of the people who are buying these box sets, they would probably think that's fantastic news.
Yeah,
they still they haven't really had any new heroes for quite a long time. Well, Scott Adkins, I guess, but doesn't really tie into this. There's not really been anyone coming out.
I think that was a kind of the flip side of how big Bruce Lee was, and then you had Jackie Chan kind of take up that, even in Asia kind of take up that kind of mantle, and there's really not been anybody who's kind of got to that scale of being known by everyone and etc. to kind of reach that, they just
post Donnie. We're kind of getting into close to being a post Donnie Yen world.
No.
Wasn't he talking about kind of cutting back on the action?
He has been for a while, and I think it was like with Jet Li, it wasn't clear whether they were saying action films or martial arts films or one-on-one martial arts films, or it's not clear. But he's definitely he's been making noises about scaling things back, and he'll have to. So but we'll see. Hopefully,
that was one of the most fun
right?
films. I mean, that's going back a bit now, but Enter the Fat Dragon, Donnie Yen.
Yeah, that was
actually one of the
decent.
most fun
Surprisingly,
martial arts films I'd seen for a while. To be fair,
agree. That was proper old school Wong Jinging. We'll see. Hopefully, it'll just be a case of things go in cycles, and sooner or later, we'll get some really charismatic, fantastic martial artists coming forwards, and people will build films around them like they did in the old days, and the genre will come back, and we'll get youngsters loving it and everything. And I don't know, vague, slightly more hopeful than I am about some of the other topics we've discussed. Put it that way.
All right, I'm going to dip my hand into the Santa's hat once more.
Okay.
Let's see what we've got here. Spice of Life, open brackets. Oh yes, you're the best. Close brackets. So that's a kind of long way of saying, do any of us have a favourite film, a film that's floated our boats this year? And how do we think the year's been generally as well, in terms of Asian film?
Well, I have to say, for me, Limbo is like a really special film. I haven't enjoyed the film so much for a really long time. The whole combination of action and drama and the whole thing, I think, was pretty impressive for me. That was the best film. But I haven't seen, unfortunately, Drive My Car, which is probably, okay, I don't know. A lot of people seem to like that one, but I think it's this whole thing, like a lot of film buffs who watch Asian films tend to like the Asian films that look like European films. So yes. I think Drive My Car definitely falls under this category.
Hi, I'm Theo Howe. I'm an easternKicks writer based in London, and I want to talk about my favourite film of the year. My favourite film of the year is Ryusuke Hamaguchi's Drive My Car. What I really liked about Drive My Car is that it shows Hamaguchi continuing his interest that he'd shown, especially in his previous two films, Asako 1 and 2 and Happy Hour, really focusing on developing his style, focused on quite extended, uncut conversations, very quiet moments. It's based on a Haruki Murakami short story, and similarly to Lee Chang-dong's Burning a couple of years ago, it sort of takes many of the rough ideas of the source material but really expands upon it to make it so much more than that short story is. What is particularly striking to me in terms of what I really like about it is what a beautiful, tender portrayal of grief it is, with our central character losing someone so close to him, and we have to watch him. It's not about the before and after. We're very much watching him go through the process of learning what it means to lose someone, learning how he has to cope with that in sort of day-to-day life, and how he then treats those around him. And Hamaguchi finds very interesting parallels between that process of grief and the process of what it means to create a work of art as an actor working with a director and vice versa. And it really just hit upon a lot of really nice ideas, not least of which is this idea that grief not only is a process, but it is a collaborative one, much like creating this brilliant work of art. Even if some members of those who are creating the play or creating the film will have different experiences to others, it's something that everyone's put their all into, and that's something that's worth celebrating. Absolutely my film of the year that we covered.
I have to say that my choice is Drive My Car out of the films I've seen. I'm probably forgetting some films I saw at the beginning of the year that maybe I liked, but actually,
not many,
I was
probably.
surprised, considering that it's a 3-hour movie, how much I liked Drive My Car and how much I didn't think, oh my god, this is really dragging along. Not at all. It's got a very interesting pace, which is kind of slow moving, but not slow cinema.
Oh, good.
It does do this thing of having the titles come in about half an hour into the movie, and that's kind of the base of it. You just kind of get into this rhythm, and it's like, okay. But
that's actually kind of a trend in Japanese movies lately. That they
well, it's for a while. There was that film a few years back.
Hime Another, you remember?
Yeah, the one that sort of that has the titles about halfway through the movie and then completely changes tone.
Great,
from
that is a great film.
A quirky comedy into serial killer land.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I want to watch that again now, man. That was such a great film.
Yeah, it really was.
But I have to say, I mean, without sound like one of those critics, but I actually really, really did enjoy Drive My Car.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So James, have you got anything?
I'm going to say word for word what Panos said. Actually, I think Limbo. It's not as good as Dog Bite Dog, which is much more hardcore, but I think it's the best one I've seen this year. And I also haven't seen Drive My Car, and I would have, but I just didn't want to. You guys, probably had it on screeners and stuff like that. But I
did
didn't
watch
want to
it at a cinema.
laptop.
I did watch it at a cinema. So
yeah, exactly.
I put off seeing it at the London Film Festival. I put off, and seeing it on a screener. I put off seeing it at, with some of the links that we got, because I don't think it would travel as well. You seeing it online, because you'd be too distracted. But it's one of those things. Being in a cinema to watch it,
I would definitely see it, but it just wasn't showing out in Glasgow. It was like after 9 o'clock, the screenings, and I wasn't. So I'm not trusting the trains out here where I'm staying. So but yeah, Limbo was a great film. Midnight was a good film as well. The Korean one.
Yeah,
with lots and lots of running around. Running around.
With the guy from Squid Game.
With the guy from Squid Game, who's completely pointless in Squid Game.
He's not completely pointless. It's just a very feeble way to get some of the narrative.
I think feeble's worse than pointless. At least pointless sounds like it could be a bit random and funny, whereas feeble just makes it. But he's great in Midnight. He's a fantastic, crazy serial killer you can just whip on disguises at the drop of a hat, and there's a mad pimp fan, which is just there's absolutely no reason for anything in that film in the best way. It's very, very fun, man.
I do want to see it. It is coming out here.
Of course,
on
that's
home
right.
Media of Eureka, I think.
Eureka, of course, that's right.
That's
next
year, I believe.
Be interested to know how that kind of caught their eye, but it's probably through the Eastern Kicks review.
I think it must have been, definitely. They're looking at it every day, looking at us every day to see.
But in general, I think it was one of probably the worst year Korean cinema had in some time. It was like after Burning and Parasite and Beasts.
It's interesting to see it's kind of shifted, for Korea it's definitely shifted more towards sort of streaming. I think with the success of some of these, with the success of Kingdom and so on, it's probably a sensible way to move. But I mean, for years, I think we've seen lots of stuff that's been very, very familiar from Korean cinema and not really done anything that we haven't seen before.
I completely agree. We've hit that kind of quality level for Korea, that whether not a quality ceiling, but. Everything just sort of blending into much of a muchness. Nothing bad. Everything the classic 3.5 stars out of 5. So many films. So it was clearly not really going to break through, and so streaming is provided a way for a lot more of these things to get through. And because I think, like you said earlier, Panos, like the Korean, whether it's through the government or through cultural organizations, there is much more of a push to get Korean content out and around the world and stuff. So it's a natural fit for them to work with streaming platforms, both for films and for TV series, everything. So I don't know. That's quite a positive development in that respect. But yeah, I think it's been a pretty poor year, not just for Korean films, but for in general.
Everything. I mean, it's a bit of a double whammy as well. I mean, I don't think there has been, because we have access that lots of folks don't in terms of film festivals, you know, outside of any kind of mainstream releases. But even then, there hasn't been
a lot of the same stuff at pretty much every festival, like across the space of a whole 12 months, give or take, right? There's not been, you know, because, and maybe that is a COVID thing as well, and the online thing, because people have, you know, before there'd be more of a clamour for a big premiere, or this film has just finished shooting so we can get that now, but maybe this year the timescales have all switched and stuff, so somebody playing a film in January and then someone else playing it in November, you know, geo-locked to their region for screening online doesn't matter so much. So no, there's lots of different reasons for it, but just not a great year, not a great year at all, man. It was a struggle to even actually think of what had come out, what I'd seen this year. Not because I've seen so much, just the opposite. You know, just not been that much to actually see that was good.
Yeah, and I guess I think because you mentioned, James, this 3.5 thing, I think Japan was always the champion of 3.5. You know, always, like there are so many films from that country that are 3.5. You know, almost everything is 3.5, and it seems like this year this 3.5 managed to get on top because Korea fell a bit lower than that, or something, at least like as a whole. And Japan seems to be on top again with the Hamaguchi and whatnot again.
It's such a depressing niche.
Yeah.
They're not bad enough, and that's why, like I say, I watch some of these Chinese propaganda films because at least I can sit there going, fuck, I'm wasting my time. No, wait, you can go and write a shitty review. Oh, I feel better now. Not much better, but at least I think I'm doing it like a war correspondent for easternKicks or something.
Also, it's a good leveler to kind of work, you know, to kind of make sure that the scores we're giving are fair, and
it's got to be the 5 stars or the 1 stars. Nothing, no more 3-star films, you know. But kind of related to that, you know, I was also looking before. I can't really even see much coming out. There's not like a big productions we're waiting for, apart from stuff like Sons of the Neon Night and stuff like the ones which haven't appeared.
And you know, I think
the wind that shakes the barley.
Hero's Ambition, or Where the Wind. It's not Where the Wind Blows. When the Wind Blows, whatever it's called. I keep on thinking of the
Why the Wind Blows or something. You know?
Whatever it's
I just
now.
mix it up with the IRA film all the time, with the wind that shakes.
That might finally get released after getting pulled from last year.
And getting reshoots like old Jung Yimo's 1 Second, but yeah, apart from these, and there is a handful of films which still haven't come out, but there isn't really anything. I can't think of any of the big directors we know are working on stuff, or you know, anything really big which is coming out or about to go into production. I don't know. So hopefully 2022 will be better, but 2021 has been an equally bad year for production. So and equally with these changing models. I mean, like you said earlier, Panos, one of the main things now is being able to plan a production you can make as quickly as possible, or you can shut down as quickly as possible and restart. So we are moving into this completely different model of film production, which Asia seems to be adapting to better than the West, to be fair. But whether or not it's going to result in massive quality or anything, I don't know. So I'm not sure what 2022 will hold. Someone say something. Someone say something cheerful. Give us some. We have to find something positive.
What do you think we are, man? Cheerful, for God's sake.
I'm drinking gin, Old Mother's Ruin. So you know, maybe that's. Well, we'll hope for the best. I'm sure the Silent Sea will be good, and I'm sure after that we'll get a few more powerhouse Korean series next year. That's vaguely positive, and I don't know, maybe some of these Hong Kong films will get released, like Sons of Neon Night and the Wind That Blows or Shakes, or whatever the wind is doing
at the moment.
The trouble with the wind is it keeps changing direction. That's the problem.
Quite so, man. But Korean cinema is probably Korean content is probably the most likely one to deliver stuff. I mean, Taiwan is we're getting a lot more Taiwanese stuff on Netflix, but it's very lodged in the 3.5 bracket or the 3 bracket. There's nothing awful, but there's nothing, all the horror films and everything, or the genre films are still, they're fairly conservative. Apart from the sadness.
Yeah, the sadness is not conservative.
It's not conservative, but it's. I really like the sadness, but it is sort of proper category 3, pretty badly made, rough around the edges, but you still like it because of its gonzo energy.
Yeah.
Type of film, everything. It's not on any technical level a good film. It's just a very fun and entertaining film. So yeah, maybe we'll see more of that kind of thing from Taiwan. That would be very welcome next year. Even I'm not too bothered about the quality if it's got delivering the gore and everything.
Okay, yeah.
Or raccoons.
We'll see, man. Maybe it will be the year of the raccoon in some way, 2022. But
Yeah, one can only hope.
One can only hope. There we go. Positive note to finish on.
So that's it for now. Thank you so much, Panos, for joining us for this episode.
Thank you for having me.
It's a
No problem
pleasure,
at all.
man.
We'll do some mashups with it. AMP
Yeah.
Will do.
Yeah. Don't forget that you can find all of our previous episodes on Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe now and you'll never miss an episode. But for now, cheers. And Happy New Year.
Oh yeah, Happy Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy
Whatever you believe
this
it.
episode goes out.
exactly whatever you're doing, just have a drink.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.